Hello guys! Today I'm standing here in front of this giant sea serpent that I built in my creative test world because I want to talk about 3D modeling and how it can help you build better in Minecraft. So right now we're standing outside of Brewers Town. Brewers Town is a build that I started in January of this year and finished around March, and I used a lot of reference images in order to construct this place. In fact, one of the videos that I put out around that time was a video telling you guys that reference images are really useful for making your builds. And while that is true, I also ran into a lot of issues with using reference images during the construction of Brewers Town. Getting a closer look at this castle here, I struggled a lot with the interiors because this was the reference image that I used, and you can see how it cuts off a lot of the interior space. This is basically the problem with only using reference images, because reference images will never show the whole of a building. You'll always be missing some kind of angle or some kind of understanding of how the whole piece works together. Now, if you're doing it for something like a square tower, in this case, it doesn't really matter if you can see all the sides, but especially when you're trying to build things that are really dynamic and organic in Minecraft, things like sea monsters, for instance, it really matters a lot to be able to know how each angle flows together to create a whole seamless structure. Another place that this is really useful is in doing ships. Unless you're somebody who's obsessed with ships or builds ships for a living, you probably don't really get how they work exactly, and in this case it is really helpful to be able to have a reference for all the different lines and sails and how they all flow together into a single cohesive structure. So we're back here in the test world and we are right next to our big sea serpent. I've decided that for this video, I want to build something a little bit smaller, so we're going to try and build a grand piano, because I've never built a piano before in Minecraft, and honestly, I don't really get how they work, so I would like to have a 3D model to kind of help me work through it. So this is the website that I have been using. It's called sketchfab.com, and I'm going to leave a link to it in the description. This isn't a sponsored video, it's just an asset that I think is really helpful for finding free 3D models. You can see in my tab here, I used a 3D model for that big sea serpent. I also used a 3D model of Notre Dame Cathedral for the last video that I made. You can check that one out. And this is the 3D model for the ship that I just showed you guys. But today we're interested in this one. I found this beautiful 3D model by Alex Poe, and we are going to try and replicate it in Minecraft. So you can see, since we have a 3D model and not just a picture, we can flip this around to whatever angle we want. Now, not every 3D model that you find available online is going to be fully complete. For instance, this one of the cathedral doesn't really have an interior, which isn't super useful if you want to make an interior for a build, in which case you have to start supplementing with other things, getting back to other 3D models, getting back to picture references, or just using your own creativity. Getting back to this model, one good thing is that you can sometimes get different versions of a model. So over here, we can go between a static posed or a closed version. So let's hop back to our creative world and start working on this. We're going to go for a dark oak outside, and the interior is probably going to be a mix of bamboo and mangrove. Since it's probably going to take me a while to figure this out exactly, I'm going to skip ahead a little bit to when I figured out a little bit more of what this is going to practically look like. Alright guys, so I've been doing a little bit of work, and as you can see, this is so far a kind of wonky grand piano. And this is where I really wanted to emphasize the benefits of the 3D model, because I realized I have no idea how the legs sit on a grand piano. I don't know if this leg is supposed to be all the way to this side, or if this is supposed to be the peak of the piano, how the curve is supposed to go. And again, this is where we can jump back into the program, and we can check out how on this piano there isn't really a pointed tip. It's more like a kind of straight line down this way, and then a gentle curve to another flat line, and then a kind of slight diagonal. And this leg sits at the very tip of the piano. So we're going to try and replicate this in the game using the kind of blocks and shapes that we have access to. Alright guys, and we are back with the finished product. So we have completed the piano. I came in with a more slender shape, and I tried to kind of get that slight rounded but mostly flat edge. We also came in here and tried to replicate the kind of goldy interior. I'll show you what I mean in a second when I flip back to the 3D model. And we've also tried to replicate the golden wheels that let the grand piano move. I've tried to make this look like it is a stage with a big red curtain hanging. You can also see we have the little poof. The poof in the 3D model had 4 legs, but obviously 4 legs in Minecraft, a little bit hard to achieve. And we have tried to replicate not only the pedals, but if I come around to the back, you can see that they actually link up to the structure. So it kind of structurally makes sense because we were able to understand how the whole thing works. So here we are back at the 3D model. You can see the kind of goldy interior with the red accents, which I tried to mimic using the bamboo and mangrove. Underneath, you can see what I was just talking about with behind the pedals. There is this kind of structure that goes up and connects to the keys inside of the piano. The little chair and those little kind of goldy wheels on the bottoms that I tried to replicate in the game by using these little bamboo mosaic tiles. So there we have it. And of course, like I said, I've used this for really big structures, really complicated ones like making an entire pirate ship or making an entire cathedral. I've also really enjoyed using this for organics, so I talked a little bit about this guy, but I'm going to give him a more proper look over. This was of course inspired by one of the 3D models that I already showed off and that I thought looked really cool. So that is this guy over here, and you can even see I tried to replicate the yellow eyes using one of those frog lights. And this guy has a bunch of little tiny orange scales. So if we pop back over to here, you can see that's why I'm trying to use a couple of these orange glazed terracotta bits throughout the structure. I did that guy yesterday, and yesterday morning I built this little thing. So this is our blue whale. I'm currently building a place called Whaler's Wharf in my Forever World Tredegor. So in order to really understand what the actual structure of a blue whale looks like, I went into a 3D model, and you can see it kind of goes up, meets this kind of blowhole bump, it dips back, it goes back up with this hump, goes back down again, a little bit of a sort of vestigial fin here, and then it slopes down to the tail. On the right hand side, you can see that this fin kind of sticks out about as much as that one does. In a real blue whale, it sticks out like the exact same length basically. But if we hop back over to the program, you can see that this is what our blue whale looks like. So again, you kind of have that sloping face, the bump here for the blowhole, another kind of slope until you get to this little vestigial bump sort of thing, and then it slopes down toward the tail. And if you spin it around, you can see the proportions perfectly on this whale, and you can even see roughly where that kind of paler bit on the bottom of the whale starts. So I hope you enjoyed, guys. You now have one more tool in your toolbox to use when you're trying to replicate stuff from real life, or even just get inspired for things. I know a lot of people like to use sites like Twitter, Pinterest, or Instagram, but having a 3D model site in your repertoire is another great way to find sources to get inspired from. If you're somebody who's really interested in getting the proportions right, getting the kind of flow of the build looking right, 3D models are going to be great for you. That is going to do it for today, guys. As always, please leave a like, subscribe if you enjoyed and you want to see similar stuff in the future. Feel free to join the Discord down below. And you can also see the Sketchfab link down below. And I'll see you guys next time.